People who are used to this channel would know probably that I rely heavily on books to generate content. Some have been indispensable sources of content, such as, of course, the Bible of the Megxit community, Tom Bower's Revenge. There's Valentine Lowe's Courtiers as well. Andrew Loney's Trader King has been a mainstay with us, and even unlikely sources of content, such as Edith Wharton's The Custom of the Country, which I was just reading for fun and went, oh my God. Undine is Meghan Markle 100 years ago. So after finishing the latest book that I relied on for content, which was the correspondence of royal love letters between, why did I say it like that? Royal love letters between Wallace and Edward, the hunt resumed. Like a bloodhound, I've been sniffing around for my next conquest, which is when I realized that there was indeed a book that was released around the same time as Revenge that I had entirely missed because it had been eclipsed by Revenge, which is Tina Brown's The Palace Papers. Now, considering the fact that Tina Brown's criticism of Meghan and Harry has been pretty spot on, especially in the last year or so, I had high expectations for the book. So, did it live up to my expectations? Well, should I spoil it? Should I give it away? No, I'm not going to. Stick around till the end because it benefits my videos in the algorithm. I'm going to be a little bit selfish to find out whether this book was actually worth the money. I thought I could make kind of a hybrid video, which is a partial review of the book, but more interestingly, extracting tidbits and information, hidden gems, so to speak, that weren't included or weren't fleshed out in other books such as Revenge and Courtiers. So chapter 19 of the book is actually the chapter that is entirely devoted to Meghan Markle, and it's called Number 6 on the Call Sheet. A promising title. There's a lot of information that we already know by now in terms of Meghan's backstory, but a couple of pages in, and I was already taken aback by how Tina Brown parroted Meghan's lore, her backstory, as though it were true, never questioning its veracity, a la Tom Bower. A major example of this is how Tina Brown approached the whole soap dishwashing liquid commercial story, which we now know, thanks to Tom Bower, is a farce, a work of fiction. It was a school project, Meghan was not special, and Thomas Markle pulled some strings to get her to star in that whole Nickelodeon feature. From all the way back when, was I even born? Seriously, it was that long ago, and she still talks about it. But here's what Tina Brown had to say. As early as age 11, she showed prodigious feminist resolve when she wrote a letter to Procter & Gamble protesting the sexist overtones of a TV ad. She goes on to describe the TV ad, we know all about it, but she concludes by saying it was an early lesson for Meghan in how to weaponize media successfully. So she basically, at the time of researching and writing this book, which was released in, I believe, April 2022, Tina never questioned it. She believed the story, a very surface level approach, basically, to writing the book, which I don't know if it's her magazine editorial background, just headlines and not digging beneath the surface, the way Tom Bower does at least, but I was quite dismayed, to say the least. Because if you read the book, you'll see that she had a lot of insiders willing to talk to her, including Thomas Markle. And so she could have asked him about the origin story, and he would have, I'm certain, told her what he told Tom Bower, which is, yeah, I kind of made that whole thing up to boost her self-esteem. But she never bothered. She just put it in here as though it were gospel. Another point of cringe de la cringe, as Cressida, Harry's ex, likes to say apparently, was Tina Brown's sickly sweet, exaggerated descriptions of Meghan's beauty. Listen to this. Meghan was no breakout ingenue. 4 years after her General Hospital debut, she was still hoofing it as one of 26 briefcase girls wearing a shimmery sateen mini dress and gold stilettos on Deal or No Deal. The girls, all beauties, but none as vividly gorgeous as number 24, Meghan Markle, with her blazing smile. I'm just gonna stop there because I literally had to stop reading the first time around when I read this sentence. Because look, I will be the first to tell you, Meghan Markle, at least, or rather I should say, especially in her younger years, was a looker. In my opinion, a lot of people don't agree. And I'm not here to be an arbiter of beauty standards. I mean, look at me, I dress like the 80s called and they want me back. Point being, a bit over the top. Another abysmal example of Tina Brown's digging abilities comes up again when the story of the Ford Explorer, remember that famous or infamous broken down car story Meghan loves to parrot?
And I would open the trunk and climb in.
Almost as much as she loves to parrot that whole soap commercial story. Well, Tina Brown seemed to have fallen for that and never bothered questioning, despite having access to the likes of Thomas Markle. And I'm not too sure about Samantha Markle, whether she spoke to her directly, but these two individuals from the Markle family already debunked the Ford Explorer story after Meghan appeared on Ellen in 2021, which was before this book was even published. So poor investigative form on Tina Brown's part. Look, I don't want to sound harsh, but after Revenge, the bar was set really high. Anyways, this is what she had to say. Meghan projected such an uptown aura. You would never know that she had arrived at the audition in a rattling second-hand Ford Explorer that required her to climb in through the trunk, as her dwindling bank account would not allow her to get the broken door locks fixed. There you have it. Tina Brown bought it, so it must be true, I guess. There are other little sprinkles of what I term ridiculousness throughout this book, such as describing Meghan as having a tiny waist. I mean, look, again, we don't body shame on this channel, but let's just keep in line with reality, I should say. Because of all the pretty features that Meghan Markle possesses, a tiny waist is not one of them. And neither is any aptitude for cooking, which she made abundantly clear on her show with Love Meghan. Now, to be fair to Tina Brown, this was a few years before the debut of that show, 3 years to be exact, but she describes her as a talented cook. There are other things that I'm going to flag for a different video because despite my having issues with the depth of information in this book, believe it or not, it does have some interesting points, which I will now doubt the veracity of, unfortunately, again, given all the examples I've just given you, but they don't detract from a really good discussion. For instance, I learned that the reason Meghan and Rick Hoffman were so close was because Rick Hoffman was actually a pretty established guy, at least as a comedian, in the entertainment industry, and he had a lot of sway on the set of Suits. In fact, Meghan used him and, as Tina Brown writes, made him her advocate with the executive producers. She asked him to lobby them to get her a car and a driver. A bold request because a chauffeured car is a much desired perk allocated to players listed at number 1 and 2, and she was number 6. It was a safety issue, she argued, because she was working so late and starting so early. Concerned for her well-being, he got it for her. And suddenly that entire friendship makes a lot of sense, except guess who wasn't invited to the wedding reception? Chapter 20 of Tina's book is quite a short chapter, and it's entirely dedicated to Prince Harry's depression, effectively, around the time he met Meghan Markle. There is a lot of information that we already know about. For instance, how Harry basically was forced to quit the army in 2015, I believe, because without a bachelor's degree, he couldn't get promoted beyond the rank of captain. And so basically he was at a career dead end. And I guess to save face, his only option was to retire. But more importantly, an aspect that was new to me that I'd heard about, but never actually read in a book in a format that is meant to be credible, was the dismal state of his love life at the time, but also how poorly he treated the women whom he was ostensibly madly in love with. We've heard a lot about how Chelsea Davy was really not prepared to accept the position of a royal wife and being in the spotlight as one of the reasons for the breakdown of the relationship. But then there's also the aspect of Harry just honestly being an a-hole of sorts. In this chapter, Tina Brown focuses on his relationship with Cressida, who everyone thought he was going to end up getting married to, by the way, until she called it off because, again, the guy really was a class A a-hole. The first thing of note was how Harry, in his early 30s, really struggled with being single. So it says here, Harry will tell anyone who will listen that he is fed up with being single, but girls are wary about dating him. They should have been, after seeing Cressida's turbulent experience. There was general agreement that Miss Bonus, is that how you say it? Or Bonus, had all the makings of a perfect partner for Harry, who was madly in love with her. She was of his world, but not obsessed with it, a beauty, but not a preening one, with a burgeoning career as an actress on stage and TV after leaving the University of Leeds. She was athletic too, winning a sports scholarship to Prior Park College in Bath. And when embarrassed, this is something I really like and I might steal, she was heard to exclaim, "Cringe de la cringe." I love that. So that's Cressida. I mean, honestly, she is a stunner and she sounds like she had the personality to boot. So what went wrong there? One might ask. She sounds like she's definitely a better catch than one Meghan Markle. Well, Harry, I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn, is what went wrong. Because you know how he's always a miserable sourpuss now? Constantly complaining, never seeing the good in anything, basically being a negative Nancy? He's always been this way. If the information in this book is correct or accurate, Cressida was very patient with Harry. He was constantly complaining to her, if not about his brother, then about his father. And eventually, she got him to seek therapy. I've never heard him credit Cressida about this publicly, but again, assuming the information in this book is good, she was the first. And William was profoundly grateful, incredibly relieved that someone finally convinced Harry to get the help he so obviously needed. The other issue is Harry's paranoia. Again, something that a lot of us may think Meghan was bringing out in him, but it's always been there. His paranoia and hatred of the press. And the problem is, Cressida, who, according to the book, was around 25 at the time, wanted to have a normal life with her boyfriend. She wanted to go out and have dinner and she was social. But Harry was the kind of person who wouldn't even hold her hand while going to a restaurant or an event. He'd walk paces ahead of her. And if they had to go somewhere where they had to get a ticket, the palace would get Harry's ticket sorted. But then he would literally tell Cressida, "Hey, you're on your own. You need to get your own ticket." I mean, if that's the prize that Meghan Markle ended up with, I'd say she deserves him. And you'd think this was all bad enough. Not only was he taking out his anger and his frustrations on his closest and most beloved members of his circle, being his family and girlfriend, he didn't even have the common courtesy to be polite to members of the public. Which is crazy because at this time, remember that Harry was the beloved, fun-loving prince who apparently had Diana's touch and had a way with people. Well, tell me if this coincides with that description. At Christmas, the couple was staying in the country with Cressida's half-sister and others in the family and decided to go for New Year's Day lunch to a small local pub in Kidlington, outside of Oxford. There were very few guests and they secured a table at the back. A person privy to the incident said, suddenly as they were leaving, this quite elderly, sweet-looking gentleman came out and said, "Oh, sir, so sorry. I know it's Christmas time, but could I just take a photograph to give my wife who isn't well?" And so Cressida opened her mouth and said, "Oh, of course." And Harry said, "Get out of my way," and went bright red in the face and stormed off in a huff. Cringe de la cringe. So is it any wonder that with behavior such as this, compounded with his mental issues, compounded with his negative attitude and his selfishness. Ultimately, as the book goes on, the intense focus on Harry's problems to the exclusion of her own was too much for Cressida, and so they broke up. She moved on, later rekindling a romance with another aristocratic Harry, the towering blonde god, as Tatler called him, Harry Wentworth Stanley, son of the Marchioness of Milford Haven. She married him in 2020, which brings us to the state of mind that he was in around the time, or when he met Meghan Markle. He became very bleak in his outlook, a palace source told Tina. He was convinced he was going to be single for the rest of his life. It was exactly these thoughts that made him incredibly vulnerable and open to a D-list desperado. On the night of the 1st of July, which is apparently when they met, if you want to believe their official timeline, although it has been all over the place, Harry was in an especially sober mood after returning from a trip to France for the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme, the deadliest battle of the First World War in which 1 million men were wounded or killed. But the trip's solemnity lifted from Harry's shoulders when he walked through the door at Soho House and was, quote, beautifully surprised by the sight of his future wife. It was as if both felt a lack that the other swiftly answered. So basically, a desperate D-list actress who is also in her head struggling with the concept of aging meets a depressed, dim-witted prince who doesn't know how to treat women well, apparently, if this is all true, if his life depended on it. And you get yourself a match made in heaven. Or is kryptonite a more apt description? I suppose for me, the question is, was this purely happenstance? Or did Meghan have some insider knowledge, whether it was from Eugenie or from that Violet character who apparently introduced them, that Harry was not in a good way, that he was vulnerable and ripe for the taking? I don't know. It could easily be pure coincidence, just
sheer dumb luck.
with dumb being the operative word. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.